All right, fans, welcome back to another episode of Discography Dudes. Today's intro is going to be pretty quick, so if you don't pay attention, you're going to miss it all.
I was going to go for something like, I was to prepare for this episode. I first listened to Ancient Baseball, but we don't have enough time to cover all their albums. but yours was better. Modern Baseball.
I don't remember a big thing. I just remember I was recording Greatest Hits with Tyler, and he showed me Top Notch by Manchester Orchestra, and that was my introduction to them, and I fell in love. And I think he showed me Your Graduation. And then right around that time, I think Zach started listening to them or had been listening to them. And so we jammed them in his car, and he showed me them. So, I think I just really liked their 2014 album and never really dug too deep into either of the other ones.
Yeah, for me it was, probably around 2015 or so, I got into the whole Midwest emo or emo revival or whatever you want to call it. And for a while I was listening to every single band in that genre, Spotify playlist, Pandora, you name it. And so Modern Baseball came up a bit, mainly Your Graduation and Tears Over Beers, and I liked but didn't love them. They were kind of just in the mix of, they have a few good songs, but I was never really crazy about them. Other bands from that kind of scene and genre I like better. Going back and listening to all of this, all of the discography, I feel kind of the same way. But yeah, they were never really up there for me. They were never anywhere close to like a Blink or Me Without You or For You're Strong or anything like that. They were always just kind of there off in the periphery. Had a few songs by them I liked. So let's go on to Sports, the first Modern Baseball album. I'll let you go first on this.
Sure.
I'll let you take the bat.
Nice. Sports, I feel like, is raw. What I wrote here is IDC about being a real band. But it works well. It feels like they're the boys next door and you get to know them. It's like endearing. They're self-deprecating and funny. But as a whole, I think the album struggles with dynamics. Like, it never feels to get any bigger than, hey guys, check out this song I just wrote. And you're like listening to them in their garage showing it to each other. And I mean, vocally, I think it's like a limitation of their vocal ranges and their styles, but also that's what makes them stand out and feel unique. So it's one reason why I think, to your point, they'll never be as big in our hearts as like a Blink or a bigger band that, I don't know, I was gonna say writes real songs, but these guys write real songs. It's something that just feels casual about it. I think it's a good record, but I don't really ever want to return to it because I think future records of theirs do this style better, and to be honest, I just have kind of outgrown it. But I think standout songs, Redo, Tears Over Beer stick out to me. A couple other choruses that are nice, but it's an impressive debut for guys so young, but it's nothing amazing.
I think it definitely falls into a lot of the revival. So I think I kind of agree with your summary on this. It feels, a lot of it, I feel like it's okay, but this is kind of for both this album and the genre in general, I don't know if I ever really related to it, but I especially don't relate to it now, because a lot of it feels like it's very based on like specific kind of drama from a certain period in your life.
Yes.
Specific kind of drama based on LARPing as an alcoholic, which I'm straight edge, and I know people who are real alcoholics, and so this is like, oh man, Tears Over Beers, and like, please stop. Like, please stop talking about how much you drink. If you're not polishing off a 6-pack before you drive home, like to, psych yourself up for the drive, you're not actually an alcoholic. Please stop. It's annoying. It reminds me of like bad character flaws that I had as a young man. Bad, like, I don't know a better way to say this, like beta male tendencies. Like Tears Over Beers, I think, is their best song, but this dude sounds like he needs, like, a testosterone shot or something. Like, the meathead behind her is checking her out. And I'm like, bro, like, man up. Like, what is your problem? Male manipulator music, I think, was the term satirically applied to some of this, and that's what it feels like. It just gives me bad vibes for extra
Hmm.
musical reasons. And again, it feels amateurish, but sometimes in a very forced way, in a
Hmm.
very kind of self-consciously quirky way, where it kind of the best example is like the first song where he's like, "I'm gonna go extinct like Triceratops," and or, and that's the kind of line where it feels clever the first time you hear it, and then like as you get older, you're like, "Man, this was really cringy and corny," and like, couldn't you have thought of like a real thing to say?
Hmm.
Um, so that's it. I think it would have been better as like a 7 song EP if it was just the first 7 songs. If every song had been as good as Tears Over Beers, it would be a probably a top, a 5 star album, 5 out of 5.
Hmm.
But it's just kind of okay with one or two standouts.
Yeah, that's sort of how I feel about it. I don't I don't feel like I get cringy as much because it feels very of that time, like both in a macro sense, but also in their lives. Like they're, I think, just in college or finishing
Mm-hmm.
No, they're in college. So like if it was late 20s, modern baseball is writing this about a younger audience, then I'd be like, okay, I feel some cringe. But this is just like you look back at your
Mm-hmm.
younger brother and it's like, okay, I went through that phase too, little guy, that sort of thing. That's sort of how I feel about it.
This feels like centered in some sort of real experience, but that was what makes it more cringy because it's like not one that I relate to at all.
Hmm.
And so it feels less like I'm watching a movie and more like I'm listening to some dude complain about his life.
Hmm.
Your mileage may vary.
So then that just takes us to You're Gonna Miss It All, which I think is a much better version
Mm-hmm.
of Sports. It's more polished. There seems to be a lot more focus on like melody and stronger songwriting here. And so maybe this is kind of what you're saying you don't like,
Yeah.
but I think there's a lot of storytelling in this album, which maybe there was in the first, and I just don't remember as much. But I like that. Because I think they do a great job of making me feel like I'm there. To me, that will suck me in to a song sometimes more than poetry that I'm gonna have to think about to get. He just has a lot of self-deprecating thoughts that I feel like, oh, I felt like that before, or maybe it makes you feel less alone. But I really love this record from front to almost back. Once your graduation comes, I think that the record should be over. Those last 2 songs, I always feel like the album's too long. They're fine as songs, but once the end of it comes, I'm always like, okay, we've hit the runtime, and I'm always confused why it's still playing music. So I have this in my number one slot, and yeah.
Yeah, to me, it seems like music's a lot better. I thought Broken Cash Machine was good. Honestly, this is like the only record where it comes on and like I'll actually start singing along the songs, even though they do have that. The lyrics have, and I don't really know how to put it into words, but it's this kind of like haphazard, awkward, amateurish kind of thing to them, where it doesn't feel like really polished,
Yeah.
um, but on the other hand, there's just some good stuff you can sing along with. I like Charlie Black going into Timmy Bowers.
Hmm.
I do like Going to Bed Now, where he's like dissing this guy because it feels like like I don't I don't think I have no reason to think that Mr. Modern Baseball is a bad person in real life, but his persona and his songs always kind of sounds kind of slimy in his
Hmm.
first 2 albums. So it's nice to kind of see him going after some dude even worse than he is.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, there are 2 of them. I don't know if you know them.
and I did find that out like just today, but they sound so similar that
They
like
do.
I
They
can't
do
tell
sound
which
so
song is
similar.
by which.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think there's some good stuff. I like Your Graduation and Broken Cash Machine. They got some real good like intimate kind of sing along stuff. But like you said, you were like it makes you feel like you're there. For me, it makes me feel like I'm there, and that there is not a place that I want to be. So
Sure.
again, um, yeah, extra musical reasons for not liking it, but I think this is their strongest album.
One thing that I think applies to probably their whole discography is um their songs certainly don't stick around too long. Like they seem to know which songs are worth being 3 minutes and which ones are like,
That's true.
we've got a minute and a half idea, let's rock it for a minute and a half. And so it kind of pairs with their seeming ADD, and I think that's fun because it's like we can do what we want because we're Mr. Modern Baseball.
Mr. Modern Base. That's Mr. Modern Baseball. Please call me modern. Mr. Baseball was my father. Anyway, the bottom of the ninth and the bases are loaded with Holy Ghost. Um, this album, I think it's better than Sports. I think it's worse than the previous one, and it feels like maybe it was. I never liked bands to
we
stop
disagree.
doing stuff. Maybe it was just time to throw in the towel. Not because anything is bad, but because it feels like a weird mix of some of the stuff sounds like stuff off of the first two albums, and then some of the stuff is getting more polished but less memorable, and it sounds like the Killers. Nothing really super stands out on here that I want to that ever makes me feel like I really need to go back to it. Nothing absolutely terrible. It kind of felt like, wow, there's this kind of honesty there in these lyrics. That's kind of not just a commentary on something that is only known to the singer, but about the kind of stuff that he had been singing about in the previous albums. Like, yeah, maybe probably a lot of those relationships would have gone better if he had had this kind of self knowledge that he displays in this track. But I think that's kind of the problem with this album, and maybe with some of the genre as a whole. It's kind of just had this running thought to myself of like, this band quit because they all graduated college. They didn't have anything to sing about anymore, and it kind of feels that way. I feel like with this kind of lyrical focus, it's similar to the pop punk bands that only sang about being a teenager. You kind of really limit yourself, as opposed to a band like My Chemical Romance, which they had this reputation for being juvenile because they had a bunch of teenage girls as fans. But that kind of abstract storytelling stuff, I feel like kind of sticks around and feels more timeless to me. So that's kind of very meta level thoughts about it. I think it's an alright album. Maybe a few tracks I'll go back to, but there's nothing here that feels like Tears Over Beers or Your Graduation, where it's like, yeah, I could really spin that track multiple times in a row. This is awesome. It feels like they never really reached to that potential on a. They're not like the Fall Out Boy where they have multiple songs you can really go back and sing along to. It feels like they kind of hit it a couple, 2 or 3 times, and 2 or 3 home runs, but they never really had figured out what the formula was for doing that on a regular basis.
I did disagree that there were no tracks here that you could spin again. But first, my background on this is obviously coming off of You're Gonna Miss It All. I was very excited for this album when it came out, and I remember I couldn't get into it. And so literally from 2016 when it came out until a week ago, I just didn't really listen to it, couldn't like it, didn't get it. And I don't know why now, because I've listened to it a few times and it doesn't seem that bizarre. So maybe I was just in a weird place. But I think the biggest difference is it feels like less immediately accessible. And maybe it's the lyrical points that we're talking about in the other albums. Like, they don't really drop you in the middle of something and talk very conversationally with you. It seems more poetic or lyrical. So I think it's less immediately accessible, but it probably resonates longer as a result. I think it's clearly their biggest step up in songwriting, and you can tell a lot more effort wrote into this. Of all their albums, I think it is the most obvious that they have 2 songwriters. The first half is written by Jake, and the back half is written by Brendan. And I think they each sing on their halves. And so the first half feels a little bit more artistic and like with that acoustic track. And then you've got Brendan with the more it sounds a little bit more harking to their older sound. But I think Just Another Face, the closing track, is very good, and it gripped me right away, and I was like, yes, this is the kind of the sound that draws me to them. It's like you can jump to it, but it's kind of got a somberness to the chorus, but it's anthemic. All that to say is it's better than I've ever considered it, and so I think for that I feel good about it, but I agree with you that it is just better than Sports and not better than You're Gonna Miss It All. So there is my final ranking of modern baseball. What were your 5 favorite songs?
5 favorite songs. Let me pull up my list that I wrote down. I would say Going to Bed Now, Your Graduation, Broken Cash Machine, What If and Tears Over Beers, even though the lyrics make me want to punch someone in the face, I think musically it is an objectively good song.
Hmm. Yeah, just another phase. Your Graduation, Rock Bottom, Fine Great, and Broken Cash Machine. So we got two that line up.
I think Your Graduation is probably going to be on everybody's list
Yeah.
of favorite modern baseball songs. I think it is
It's
a
so
really
good.
iconic song. Like, it's kind of sad that like radio pretty much died before this band even became a thing. Because like, if you know, in the radio era, that would have been the single, and that would have been the thing that got played. It's a very vivid image in my head of what this band would have been like in the pop punk sort of era. But anyway, yep, I think good, solid band. Not my favorite from that group, but some good songs.
Close us off with a dad joke.
Oh, like, you put me on the spot, and now I can't come up with one. I feel like mine are more like spur of the moment.
Let's see what ChatGPT says. Why did modern baseball get benched? Because they kept bringing too much emotion to the field. Emotion.